Morning everybody, how are we doing? So I'm late, always late on a Thursday. Can never make it in time, it's impossible. Right, how's everybody doing? News overnight, we had the yen. Let me just take off all the yellows. We had the Bank of Japan outlook report. I haven't had a chance to look at the news yet. I'll have a look at that in a second. The monetary policy statement and the press conference, which only started at 7:30. So I'm not even sure if that's still going on at the moment. We'll have a quick look at the DAX. What's the DAX? DAX? The yens. There's certainly a load of ADRs going off, and they're all going off on the yens, which is a good sign. What's New Zealand dollar yen doing? Oh, here we go. There we go. Right, good. So got the expected result. Oh, crying out loud. When I click on a chart, switch the time frame of the chart. Thank you. Did anybody get on any yens? Morning, Stevie. Morning, Diamond. Yeah, I've seen the gap on the DAX. I'm on that already. Not going well at the moment, but I'm on it. Excuse me. So we're looking to long anything yen, looking for yen weakness. Kuroda basically said that they were happy to let the US dollar yen go to 135. Somewhere around here is resistance from a long time back. So this is kind of like an all-time high-ish type scenario. They're happy to let their currency devalue up to there. Wouldn't be a major problem. I think when it does get to there, they're going to look at it and go, this is quite a major problem. So this is where I'm expecting us to get to for the US dollar yen. So you can look at all the other yens and sort of extrapolate where we might be going with them. So I've got the New Zealand dollar yen on. We looked at all the yens yesterday. We've been looking at all the yens all week, preparing for this. So it's starting to play out. So I'm looking to hold this as long as I can. It's difficult to know whether this is actually going to be the next leg. Obviously, there is every opportunity we could just double top and bounce. Anything can happen at the moment. This market's absolutely nuts. Morning, James. Morning, Andy. Aseni. Got UJ longs playing nicely. Excellent. So there's obviously US dollar yen's already broken out to new highs anyway. New Zealand dollar yen was kind of my favourite of the lot because it had the deepest pullback, which is why I took that one. And we were down at this level of support. All going pretty well. Even the pound and the euro are managing to beat the yen. So we have got that weak yen that we were expecting. DAX. What's the time? 8 o'clock. Oh, yeah, sorry. So DAX... obviously, we've got this gap fill potential in play. I've got one short on. We started pushing down. I got into this candle before it closed. Big mistake. And it closed bullish. It was looking bearish when I got in, but I didn't wait. I just opened the charts and went, oh, there's a gap. That looks bearish, and jumped in. So that's looking pretty good for a gap fill. I've got that one position on. I've got a second position entry there. I'm going to take a third position entry down here towards the gap as well. We'll see if that plays out this morning. So yens, let's have a quick look at the news, what actually was said. Japanese economy is advancing up as a trend 22 minutes ago, so that's in the press conference. Outlook for economy, let's have a look at financial juice. They probably have a little bit more on it. Okay, so interest rate actual is -1 as forecast. That's fine. Maintaining the yield target. We are leaving our forward guidance on interest rates unchanged, as we expect short and long-term policy rates to remain at lower levels. So no change. So weak yen still. Ease policy as needed. Keep a close eye on pandemic impact. Yep. Risks to Japan economic outlook are roughly balanced, with risks in economic downside and risks blah, 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 leaning to the upside. Every business day we offer buy 10-year bonds with 25% fixed through blah 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 blah. Purchase no upper limit. Right, so they're going to continue their bond purchasing, which means that we should continue to see they're trying to prop up the yen. with purchases, and obviously the yen isn't happy about it, as we can see. So should, in theory, be a continuation drop on this. These, I think, are probably holders. So I might try and swing this and use the US dollar yen as a measure, because we've got hard and fast targets on the US dollar yen set by the Bank of Japan. So this level here that they are interested in, 135, I think we can sort of long our yens until we sort of get up to this sort of area. So that's the plan. Bank of Japan, every business day we offer to buy 10-year JGBs at 25 through fixed rate operations unless it's highly likely that no bids will be submitted. Is it important? Yeah, basically they are trying this. They're doing the same thing as Europe, trying to prop up their currency by bond purchases, and it's just the way it's very complicated. I don't fully understand the whole of the economics. You don't need to. The reason the COT report has always been used is because that is what the analysts do. But at the end of the day, the currency is struggling. They are trying to prop their currency up by purchasing their currency and building stocks, which is the same thing that the euro has been doing for many years. Some people look at it as even considered to be a kind of fraudulent activity. It's not. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing to say you can do or can't do what you like when you're a central bank. And you can do what the government says, basically, can't you? But it's frowned upon because it creates debt problems moving forward. The strength in the yen will come when they start to pick up economically and they don't have to continue sort of propping their own currency up. So when that is going to happen, we don't know. They've hinted at it. They've put a plan in place, and we had this. I can't remember when it was. I think it might have been here a few weeks ago. Yeah, it was probably around about there. We had this announcement and this plan put in place, and everyone was like, "Oh, yen! They're sorting it out. Look what they're going to be doing. They're going to be strengthening the currency. They're going to be building their economy. They're going to be doing this, that, and the other." And then nothing happened, and it was kind of, all right, no, they're not doing it at the moment. And then it all went obviously wrong in March. So I think what we're going to see until they decide to do any rate changes is a sort of neutral to weak yen. But I think they will probably intervene at some point in the next few weeks if we get up to that sort of level. So there'll be some bullish statement come out that will try to put this into balance, and they'll try and hold it around that level. But, nothing is in stone at the moment. It just takes one rocket in the wrong place, one person to say the wrong thing, and the whole thing unravels, doesn't it, at the minute? So this could well just go opposite direction. But all looks good for a swing based on today's movement, based off the news. So the market is very unhappy about the news, and they are not interested in the yen. So therefore, if we can get new highs on this and hold these positions, I will do. See how high we can get. But you never know. So obviously ADRs today, I probably wouldn't want to stand in front of any of this yen activity. The only thing hit is the yen, apart from the pound. There's a few New Zealand's hit as well. New Zealand US has hit. That's already bounced. Yeah, New Zealand wasn't happy in the Asian session for some reason. So we've had New Zealand dollar, US dollar bouncing off these lows. New Zealand dollar CAD, yes, it's just New Zealand's have hit, and the pound New Zealand's hit to the upside, obviously, because New Zealand's been weak. That's a good short. A little bit late into that, but That looks like potentially a nice little short there. Looking for short opportunities on the pound. Adding one more onto my DAX on my other account. Just coming back to my initial entry on this account. Tempted with that, a little bit late in. I'm going to try a little short on this pound New Zealand up here. These highs up here is where I would not want to see invalidated. If we can push back up, if it does decide to push back up into these highs in this area here, I'd enter a second short position up there, stop above these highs. Pound is weak at the minute. We've had a weak New Zealand dollar, which has allowed the pound to get that little bit of extra oomph. But I can't see any reason why we should be getting a strong pound. So I should be looking for short opportunities on the pounds. And that looks like a pretty good one to me. So short one those. I did take some losses this morning. I left the position open on the DAX last night. Big mistake. And we gapped up. I wasn't paying attention last night, and I dropped a clanger. So I took $100 loss on that this morning. I had this short from yesterday. I left it in the market. It was a pending order. And it triggered. By the time I spotted it, the market was closed, and obviously we gapped up. So you can see my stop was here. So I actually took just over 1% and a bit loss on that position. Pound odd, big schoolboy mistake that was. Pound odd, got out of that one. So pound New Zealand obviously is very similar to that position that I took on the pound odd. Unfortunately, just got taken out. Stop losses. Who'd have thunk it? They come and take your stop losses at highs. So yeah, I only wanted a single position on that one, and it came up and it took me out in that propulsion gap, unfortunately. So replacing that trade with the pound New Zealand, because it's pretty much the same thing, but the market structure on the pound New Zealand I think is a little bit nicer. We've got highs which are a bit closer, so actually it looks a little bit of a nicer trade at the minute. Right, so that's ADRs covered. So I'm rushing around today. It's horrible when you just kind of rush around all the time. We're just rejecting these lows. Oh, brilliant. Come on, DAX, what are you doing? We've double bottomed on the S&P. And the Nasdaq is doing something very similar. I'm just putting my stop above that high. Roughly there already on this one anyway. We've got a bit of a weak open on the DAX this morning. We'll have a look at the dailies as well. We've got a gap also to fill on the Nasdaq and a gap to fill on the S&P. We've filled the gap on the Dow. So there's gap fills across the board on all indices this morning. So that's good because we should get some bearish price action at the open, hopefully. They've upped the value of stocks. Obviously, they will come down to try and fill that gap. So looking at the dailies yesterday, a bit of a mixed bag yesterday, as you can see. We had a huge doji put in, and obviously we've gapped up quite dramatically. So the close was obviously down there, and we've gapped up well. So that gap fill there potentially is in play for this session. They don't always get filled, as we know. Gaps, sometimes they will take a few days to come back and sort them out. Occasionally we'll get ones that get orphaned and left behind and don't get filled at all. for a long time. So we'll see what happens with it. But they're always in play on the day. Sometimes, obviously, we get a push up, we get accumulation, we get a drop the next day or the same day. It varies wildly. But around about 70% of the time, we're off and we're in there within a session or session and a bit. So hopefully we'll get that today. We obviously had a big whipsaw day yesterday, stopped out on those positions. We came up, tapped straight into the previous day's low and rejected. So I was looking yesterday, if you remember, I was looking for a pull push down, which I traded yesterday very nicely. And then I was looking for that pullback up into roughly 50% or roughly up into these levels. But I wasn't expecting them to drop it back down into a doji. So this is a real indecision candle on the DAX at the minute. Quite often, following one of those, we get a 3-bar reversal. So potentially this is a good upward movement that we're going to see today, which seems to be starting already. A bit difficult to get into this now. So there's your opening range break to the high. If we're going to leave this gap open for the morning, target-wise is very tricky. There's a lot of wicks potentially to act as levels of resistance to the upside. The main obvious ones I can see is going to be the previous day before that up day there. So this low here. Let me just move. Got so many lines on here. Not quite sure how many of these are actually relevant and from this chart. Some of these might be from previous charts, but so we got this area here as well that we are tapping into now. That's gone that line. Let me put that back up there. So this low here, yeah, is very, very, very supportive. So the this the 14 is basically the 14, probably 1450 level, somewhere around there, potentially on the DAX. If we can push up to that level, I would expect to see some kind of rejection up there. Whether or not we can ride it up there is to be seen. Whether this is a false move this morning and whether we're going to pull it back, tricky. So we'll watch that. Indices mostly up on positive Facebook numbers. Yeah, let's have a look at what they're buying. Well, they're not buying anything at the moment because the market's shut. But we'll be able to tell if the Nasdaq's going crazy. Likelihood is a majority of that is going to be Facebook. I think I've got the volume turned off on that. Hang on. Yeah, I have. Oh, no, I haven't. It's not really any activity at the minute. But yeah, other indices as well. We had a little bit more of a positive push on the US indices. The Dow's obviously gone completely the opposite way. There's so much divergence on these. On a overall basis, they're all doing roughly the same thing. But on an actual intraday basis, it's quite a vast difference because the stocks on the Dow and the stocks on the Nas and the S&P are very different. So, you know, there's a lot of different sectors. Obviously, that's all tech sector. That is made up of the vast majority of the top 10 are tech sector. That's made up of lots of different sectors. So you get, you know, overall market down, but you get positive on that one and negative on the Dow. But overall, we are still very, very bearish. But obviously, we've come off of these lows now. So there is an argument, again, for just going into a range on the indices at the present. So it's very, very difficult to call. You know, market's shouting bear market, but it's showing us over and over again it's not interested in a bear market. This is the third attempt now, which is potentially getting rejected. So we could be seeing upward movement for the next few days. ADR Aussie yen. So it looks like the yen's still pushing nicely. US dollar yen's pulling back slightly. stalling out at the highs at the moment. Just watching the other indices. We've basically we've got this potential double top in this propulsion gap coming up. We've rejected this once. We're up at that zone at the moment. I'm just wondering whether or not they are going to pull back from this area. I'm just watching these highs basically just to see what happens at these highs. Nasdaq's doing exactly the same thing. So we've had a little bit of absorption and rejection up at the highs. I just really like I'd love when you got a big gap like when we got on the DAX here. They're just so tempting for shorts. Actually, I'm just going to cancel that off for a minute. We've got 2 minutes left on this candle. I just want to see how this candle paints on the DAX. So we got further ADRs being pushed on the yens, but wouldn't we want to be taking any of those? Yens, obviously, on the hourlies. The only other hourlies we've got are Euro CAD. We've got some buying coming through. Aussie New Zealand as well. A lot of movement today. We're 2 days before the end of the month as well. So yeah, EuroCAD hourly extended to the downside. Not looking to long the euro. Euro US dollar, same thing. Not looking to long the euro. Had my sell limit up there. It's not interested in my sell limit, is it? I'm moving it down a little bit. I'm going to leave it in the market. If this gather has any kind of push up into support, just want to short the euro basically. Leaving that where it is. Lots of buying coming in. So we've got new highs just put in. Round number approaching. And a bit more rejection. That's what I was looking for. Bit more rejection at the highs. I'm going to take a wide stop short underneath that last candle. And see if we can get a push down off of that. Okay, just watch that for a minute. Not a lot of activity. There's not a lot of frenzied buying or selling on any of the indices this morning. So bit of a quiet one by those things on the open. So yeah, EuroCAD on the hourly. I'm looking for shorts on that one. Euro US dollar, again, wouldn't be looking really for longs on it. Textbook long from an RSI perspective. A little bit more buying coming in at the minute. Would normally expect a decent profit take on that, but we need the US dollar to weaken. We've got GDP figures this afternoon at 1:30, so there is potential for big US dollar movement this afternoon at 1:30. That might be why we're having fairly quiet opens on the indices this morning, actually, because they're waiting for the GDP figures to come out. So we may get accumulation this morning. So depending on what happens with that, this is the perfect time for negative US dollar. So this looks like a really good long if you want to and are inclined to long the euro. I just don't want to long the euro, but I think there's a high probability we will get some kind of push. The problem is I haven't got a clue where this thing could possibly go to. There's a lot of targets to the upside, obviously, that we could probably aim for, but it's the euro. So unless Lagarde comes out and says anything positive, if it's temporary US dollar weakness, this thing's just going to turn around very, very quickly. So there's not many things really that I want to long against the US dollar at the minute. They're all probably going to have a decent push up. But I can't really see an easy target to the upside for it. So up to you if you want to long anything US dollar. It would be my guess that we're probably going to get either around as expected or negative on the GDP. There's quite a low forecast, but the market has factored this in obviously already, so it'll probably be used for some kind of manipulation. And the fact that we've had such a dramatic drop on a dramatic push on the US dollar, I suspect they will probably use it for some kind of profit-taking move, but don't know where it's going to go with any of these because they're all so weak at the moment. On the 4 hours, we've got pretty much the same as yesterday. Aussie dollar CAD was extended. It's not going to be extended anymore. Aussie dollar US dollar, again, everything's kind of pushing up against the US dollar at the moment. The US dollar is having a nice quiet morning, very weak. Not a lot of money coming into the US dollar because it's all going into the yen at the minute, obviously, or coming out of the yen at the minute. So everything's starting to get that little bit of a push, which again is slightly worrying because everyone's going to be going, oh, look, we can start longing everything against the US dollar and then we'll get a positive figure come out and they'll tank it. Impossible to tell what's going to happen this afternoon. It's news. We just have to play it by ear. But these all look really good for longs. I was on the US dollar Swiss, as you know, yesterday. Hasn't stopped. We're just not getting any weakness coming through. So anything against the US dollar at the minute is a good opportunity if you can get into them. We missed it, unfortunately, this morning, but just use a stop. And if the news comes out negative or as expected, we will probably see the US dollar weaken and we'll get a big spike off the back of it. So Euro CAD is very extended. Again, not really interested in long in this. The CAD is obviously very strong, as we can see at the moment. It's had positive news. Oil's doing well. Everything's good for Canada. So yeah, not really interested in anything but pulling back and shorting that. But yeah, it's going to pull back. That's the last pullback you had, be warned. Previous to that, you've done a bit more actually, but you just don't know with the euro how much of a pullback you're going to get. So looking for short opportunities rather than longs. Euro US obviously massively extended. Strong US dollar, weak on the euro. Every flag has basically been sold. Again, you kind of missed it if you wanted to get into it this morning. It's got further to go. I just think it's got further to go. We've had more than 3 legs on this thing. Again, it's all going to come down to news. So, meh. I just don't want to long the euro. A pound CAD, I don't really want to long the pound against the CAD. Same thing, euro CAD, pound CAD. Very, very, very nicely extended. Yes, you're going to get a little bit of a pullback, but it's something you want to scalp intraday at some point, and trying to time these reversals is very, very, very difficult. So I wouldn't want to be taking that long either. Pound US dollar, same story. I've got a buy limit sitting on this one, down at this level, 124,687, which is this area in here that I identified as a support, and then we've got this one below as well. So this is the zone I would expect us to get the bounce from, somewhere in here. We've dropped so hard, and I was hoping that they were going to push for this by the time the news came out, but it looks like they're pulling it back. So unless in the next 4 hours we get a dramatic reversal on this candlestick, I'm going to miss this entry. But you never know. They could move it down on the news and then pump it back up again. But that's where I'd expect to start seeing some price action coming in, somewhere around ADR today, if it gets down to there. New Zealand dollar CAD. Sorry, just watching the indices flying without me. Right, so 14,000. There's quite a fair bit of buying coming in. Just going short one on the DAX. This is a pure speculative short based on the fact that we have just hit big round number. I've got a sell stop ready for a second position if we get that reaction down to there. There would be a lot of limit orders sitting up there ready at 14,000. As you can see, we've tapped it and we've pulled straight off. It's whether or not there's enough buyers coming in today to drive through this level. But it's a good speculative short. All round numbers are always good to take a little punt at. Quite often you get big bounces if they're going to bounce. So yeah, pound US dollar, very difficult. New Zealand dollar CAD has come off of 100% ADR. Again, wouldn't want to be really looking at the CAD. Anything against the CAD at the minute. We had that symmetrical triangle break, which just has not stopped. It's come down into a lovely support level now. So this is kind of point of no return. As you can see, we've had a lovely bounce off of it. But whether or not this is where we are going to get some proper bounce from, difficult to say. The trouble is at the moment is still knowing how much of this is speculative. The profit take moves don't seem to be very high at all. We're not getting any decent pullbacks. Yeah, we're not seeing this. We're seeing basically moves, flags. This is no use for mean reversion trading at all. It's just not working properly at the minute. The market's far too strong, far too weak. So bear with me, just watching. DAX has just broken that level on that candle. I'm just watching price action. This is a obviously very speculative trade. It's just a round number trade. So I'm just watching it to see what happens because I'm just thinking of jumping out. I'm looking for a quick turnaround up here. Which we don't seem to be getting. So this is the candlestick. If we go bullish on this candlestick, I'm going to exit that. Where do we get to? New Zealand dollar CAD. New Zealand dollar US dollar is the same story. Everything is the same story. We're lovely bullish engulfing off of ADR at the moment. We're down at a decent area of potential support. All going to come down to... Oh, no, we're not. Sorry, that's the one we slammed through. All going to come down to what happens with the GDP figures this afternoon. So with all of these, I suspect what we're going to see is not a great amount of movement on the US dollar pairs during the London session. So with all of these US dollars, where we've got a reversal alert this morning, so the vast majority, we've got bullish price action on the hourly and the 4 hourly. If we get a pullback in London, i.e. a retest, these will be lovely retests to take because your risk is going to be very, very tiny. 130 is the GDP figures. If we can get in around here on retests, you're going to have very low risk entries and potentially massive rewards off the back of the news if we get a weakened US dollar. Aussie dollar CAD has just hit as well. Aussie dollar New Zealand. Aussie dollar's been hammered. So we're just going to get out of that. Closing that. DAX. Yeah, so all of these are worth watching. If we get a decent pullback, oh, you're kidding me. I think it's going to be one of those mornings. New Zealand dollar yen 125, very nice. Thank you very much. Yeah, so any pullbacks on these? So New Zealand dollar, US dollar, pound, US dollar, euro, US dollar. New Zealand and the Aussie would be my kind of favourites. They've obviously gone the furthest, which is going to be the hardest to get into, but just purely because they've got more chance of strengthening, I think, than the euro and the just going short one more. Sorry. We are getting rejected at 14,000. I'm just watching the 1 minute chart just to get a little bit more of a clue, because we're still getting bullish price action coming through at the moment. So I'm reducing risk right down on this. I'm not taking high risk on it. I'm just this is literally a level. This level is either going to hold or it's not. If it holds, we've got a very high chance of getting a big drop. If it doesn't hold, obviously it's a very small risk to take, but big round numbers, of especially triple O numbers on 5 digits, are very, very strong a lot of the time. So yeah, any of these, if we can get retests on them, you're probably actually looking at probably the pound and the euro are going to be the ones which you're more likely to get that retest on for longs. So just watch out for those. Anytime this morning up until about 1 o'clock. So I'm just taking a short on my other account as well. We're going to send accumulate up there, aren't we? All the US dollars, obviously, are, from a 4 hour perspective, are massively extended. And this morning we are all pulling off the highs, apart from the yen, obviously. Again, potential drops, same sort of thing on these. Reversal alerts we've had, look for retest entries and stops above those highs. They're just high probability. Trading in the news, the best way to trade the news, in my opinion, and the way I've always tried to do it, is to get yourself into positions like I did with the New Zealand dollar yen. Get yourself into positions before the news is released. You're going to get a much better entry, and if you catch it, you're going to do very well out of it. People that try and news trade, wait for the news to come out and trade while the news is happening, that's where you get in and get it wrong. What you want to do is try and get into these. Oh my God, I can't believe it. I'm out. Cancelling that pending off. So DAX wants to go high today. Obviously. Missed that opening range breakout. It's another one of those days. Can't catch the thing. Yeah, we've had one pause candle again. So yeah, that's the best way to trade the news. Get into the position. You want to be in the positions in the morning before the news is released, or sort of session before the news is released, and then you got a 50-50 shot of that news coming out in your favour, haven't you? There's good odds. You're always going to get a very high reward based on risk, because the news is going to spike. So you always know you're going to get easily a 1.5 to 1 reward on it. So obviously you're limited to the number of opportunities you're going to have, but yeah, so that's kind of the way I want to play it. But at the moment, the US dollar pairs short are probably the best bet. I mean, the US dollar Swiss is the best bet, which is the one I tried to get into and couldn't get into. So I might take a little short on that. speculative short. Just go above ADR on it in case they do a liquidity run and drop, which is highly likely. And if that is the one, that is the one. And add into it if we get the push down. Euro pound, yes, I am still in that book. 2 positions on that at the minute. So initial entry was off of the break of those lows, and then second entry as we broke these highs. So in there, and we're accumulating at the moment. We've just dropped down into support. So yeah, but still short on that one. There's loads and loads and loads and loads of propulsion gaps on this. I think we've got much more downside on this. I haven't put a TP on it. I'm just waiting to see where we go. We have got the potential for this to try and do a sort of head and shoulders move at the moment. It's kind of done the shoulder thing though. This is your neckline here. So if you look at it, we are on the neckline now. So a break of that. In fact, I'm going to put another sell limit under there. Break of that would confirm that head and shoulders break. But you know what I feel about head and shoulders? 90% of head and shoulders end up doing that. Yeah, so you need to be out here. Or here, really. Because the likelihood is head and shoulders are usually just wide accumulation patterns in a continuation trend. Yes, they do work, but they're not. They don't go. They're not reversal patterns. Big reversal patterns usually. Right, so that's it on the FX pairs. Indices being a bit annoying this morning. Anybody got any other pairs they want me to look at in particular? Aussie US. We've got big moves going on at the moment on the Aussies. Big strong Australian dollar and New Zealand dollar this morning, which is lovely because we've got a weak yen and we've got a lovely strong New Zealand dollar. Just happened to pick the right one, didn't I? For a change. Nice when it happens. So just hitting ADR, RSI highs at the moment. And coming up into potential resistance, but holding it. Leaving my stop in place at the lows, way down below. Might move it up a little bit, but I don't want to go break even on this. If I go break even on this, you know what's going to happen. They're going to look at this move and then they're going to pull back on this move and then they're going to continue. So if you moved into break even, you're just going to get stopped out on it. So just let it run. So it's rejecting that neckline quite nicely, euro pound at the minute. See what happens with that. I should be monitoring this one. Again, if we break above here, slightly worrying, but it's the euro. US dollar Swiss, short, just got in short on that. Large extension on RSI on the 4 hour, absolute rocket to the upside. We've basically got GDP figures, so GDP is either going to do that or it's going to do that. You don't know the figures, I don't know the figures, and the market, we don't know how much is factored in, so one of them will be happening. I don't know which. But I'm banking on basically the market wanting to do a profit take on all of this lovely position they've built at some point very soon. So I'm hoping they're going to use GDP to do it. in which case obviously I'll get in within a second short and we'll go see how far we get down as a move to the downside. But this is where I'll be targeting this level here. This is obviously the accumulation before the push, so this propulsion gap here. Thinking Boocamp, this is where all the liquidity pool is going to be sitting. That's where they're going to be targeting. That's where all the buyers will be sitting. So anywhere around that level is where we would look to get a rejection, assuming obviously we come down. Aussie dollar Swiss, Aussie Swiss is a bit of a tricky one. It's bullish, and we've just basically broken down into support, but we haven't really got very far. This morning is the first move we've had really that's convincing towards the upside again. So I'd be looking for longs, I'd be looking for pullbacks and looking for long opportunities on it. The Swiss franc is not powering up anywhere near as much as usually it does at the moment. So we're not getting the strength on the Swiss franc or the weakness on the Swiss franc that we tend to see. So you're reliant purely on Australian dollar. And the trouble with the Aussie dollar is there's very little news comes out about the Aussie dollar. So it's quite a difficult one. But yeah, it's a support resistance bounce here. We've had the reversal alert, we've had the retest, but we haven't gone anywhere. But we just made new highs. So if you look at this drop down, pound yen ADR on 50. So if you drop down to Aussie Swiss on an hourly, you want to be looking for where we're going to pull back into. So we've got an accumulation there, which you could get another entry on. All these targets to the upside. But, you know, it's an uptrend, so we could easily make new highs on it, couldn't we? Again, it's so very difficult at the minute to give any kind of long-term forecast on anything, because the war is what's driving the market at the moment, and the switch of power on oil and gas, and you know, who would have thought that everybody would have dumped all their money into the Australian dollar and the New Zealand dollar because a war broke out? It never happens. It's always going into the yen and the US dollar. What hasn't happened this year hasn't happened. So you know, you just don't know what is going to happen next. If you're going to long it, you just want to watch out for where we're potentially going to be getting bounces. So those two would be my guess if we are going to, if this is the next leg down on a short move, which is what market structure is indicating at the moment, short term. Long term, market structure has broken to the downside. So, but super long term, we're bullish. We're looking for a bounce here. So, you know, everything's always got two ways of looking at it. If you're trading it short term, obviously, we've just broken out of new highs. So it's either going to be a false breakout, we're just going to sit and continue to accumulate for today, or we're going to pull back and bounce. So anywhere around here, you want to be looking for long opportunities. But difficult one. Do you think this squeeze will start to unwind at FOMC? Seems a way off still for it to continue until next Wednesday. I don't really know. Euro yen 150. Still pushing. Don't get in front of these yens today. Hopefully you got on them, but we've got some bearish activity starting to show on the indices. Is this just a pullback though? It's a fair bit of selling coming in, isn't there? Going short one. See if we can hold a short. Yeah, but the news obviously moving into next week. FOMC is next Wednesday evening. The rates are expected to increase. I very much doubt they will change their forecast. It's a double bubble next week because we've got non-farm payroll on Friday. Oh, what on earth was that? Got non-farm payroll on Friday. And FOMC on Wednesday. So next week's utterly crazy. We've got unemployment figures for the New Zealand dollar. We've got the rates for Australian dollar. It's just next week is the news week from heaven. So there's an awful lot of movement going on next week that can tip everything in any direction they fancy. So you just got to really, I think, at the moment with these US dollars, assume that they're going to continue to strengthen. But we are obviously looking for some kind of pullback on these before they get their next leg up. And that is what I think they will probably use this week. And we'll look to push maybe the week after. But it all depends on what the Fed says. We don't know what they're going to say. So it's very difficult to forecast at the minute. But as I say, this is why I'm sort of looking at the lower time frames, really getting in, getting out as fast as I can, because everything long term is very shady at the minute, as you can see by the DAX. It's just going up again. Where are we going? So 14,000 is not holding. They're certainly not interested in the gap at the moment. It's just hard to pick a level, isn't it, on this thing at the minute? So previous days, we've got lots of low levels from the dailies in here. As I said, we've just tapped into the 14,043 level, which is this one here, which is quite a strong support. So this looks like a good potential shorting level. But failing that, we're obviously coming probably up to double top this area. It's a hell of a push, isn't it, for a morning session? We'll see. But yeah, I'm looking for the gap fill still. I reckon we're still going to get the gap fill at some point today. Hopeful. The main reason is because we got the gap on the other indices as well. We've got gaps everywhere. Swiss yen 200. So we've got the gaps across the board. Market will be looking at those in New York Open as well. But the opening range break was a bit difficult to take this morning because that was just too big, too fast. So hard one. I'm probably going to move the live rooms basically back down to one session from next week, because 2 sessions is killing me. Basically, I'm burning out, and it's kind of making me overtrade a little bit as well, because obviously I'm concentrating too hard on my entries during the opens and not looking at them as much in the interim, because I'm not trading usually as much in the interim. So I'm looking at potentially moving back down to one session, but obviously making it a decent session. So we do every FX pair every day, and obviously we'll do indices outlooks, and I will post Telegram trades. Basically, is what I'm planning on doing. So I just wanted everybody's opinion on morning or afternoon. Whether it's better to trade the morning session or the afternoon session. The morning session, I tend to get more, obviously, and a lot more people are from the US in the afternoon session. So I don't know what everybody's thoughts are on whether they prefer to go morning or afternoon, or what. So I'll put a little poll in the Telegram group if you're in the Telegram group, but just let me know, because the analysis, obviously we used to have just the one session a day, and the analysis in the afternoons from an RSI perspective obviously is very, very similar to the mornings. So I think we can probably do the one session, and the morning session with Frankfurt, obviously quite often there's a gap fill play, which happens at 7 o'clock in the morning anyway, which is way before we obviously come on. The afternoon session, we've got more instruments available and everything moves a lot more in the afternoon. So I'd be more inclined to scalp the afternoons really, and post sort of Frankfurt trades in the mornings. But I don't know what you feel. Let me know what your sort of thoughts are, and we can have a think. That's all I've got for you this morning, really. So I'm just going to try and short this DAX this morning. We've had decent push up. We're not quite up to ADR. We've got this level as well that I'm interested in at the highs. So that's really what I'm looking for, is potentially playing a short and trying to scale back down for this gap. But we seem to have run out of oomph up here. So I think what we may well have is kind of a little bit of a holding pattern until GDP at 130. So this is what we need to be concentrating on. We've gone way too far. We're in next week. This afternoon. So 130, which is an hour before we come on, is the GDP. So we've had a push and a very lackluster session across the board on the rest of it. So I think we're probably going to sort of hover here. But when the GDP figures come out, we'll get a lot of activity probably across all indices. So that might be what they use to basically get that drop in. So I'm going to try and hold some positions if I can get into a couple of positions. Not going to get in very close together. So I'll be looking for those sorts of decent distance entries. So we got an average which isn't going to get too crazy. Swiss yen, whoa. Weekly range hit. It's Thursday. For me, afternoon we were better. It's 4:53 a.m. here. That makes sense. US session, please, to capture both the UK and the US sessions. Cool. Whichever is fine. I'd be useful to get a quick summary analysis of the indices. Afternoon session. Vampires like me in the States appreciates FX review in your morning session. I can't win, can I? Morning, afternoon. The vast majority of the movement on the FX pairs happens in London, I find anyway. And the thing with an afternoon session, which is another advantage, is you can analyze the market in the afternoon session, and then you get your setups which you can get into, and they move the following day. So I don't really think it makes a lot of difference when you sort of do your analysis, higher time frame analysis. So if we're looking at levels on things, on higher time frames, you're kind of looking at it thinking, right, when we get down to here, I'm going to take a long. It's going to take hours to get down there. So I don't think it really matters too much. And if you're looking at obviously longer term, this is a bad example because we haven't got any support anywhere on anything to do with the pound or the euro or the yen. This is the trouble. Everything's just in utter skyrocket mode, isn't it? Look, I can't see any support or resistance to the left on anything. Here we go, pound New Zealand. So if we were saying basically this is the level we're looking at, we could be looking at this level literally for days, waiting for us to get down to it. So it's going to be similar sort of analysis kind of every day, isn't it? Which is what we find with the RSI extensions. This stuff's been extended on RSI. Pound US dollar's been extended on RSI for days. US dollar Swiss for days. You know, we'll be looking for opportunities on them for a long time. But I will post things in the Telegram group more if I'm doing less live sessions as I see things. So whizzing through the chart. I always whiz through the charts every morning, regardless. So, but most people seem to be more interested in afternoon. So I'll put a little poll in Telegram as well. Pan New Zealand trade is triggered and in. DAX is being a pain in the backside. We had some selling coming in. I don't know if you heard it, but we had some fairly consistent selling across the board there, but doesn't seem to have actually turned into an awful lot. But it is a good start. Morning from South Africa. Morning, Sheldon. How are you doing? Right. So yeah, I'll put a little poll in the Telegram group. We'll see what the majority are interested in. It seems to be London, and it was New York, and it was before as well. To be fair, but when I'm position trading, obviously I'm holding stuff for days, and I'm concentrating on the 4-hour charts. So it really doesn't matter when you do your analysis on the 4-hour charts. You've only got 12 candles in a day. Sorry, 6 candles in a day. Can't add up. So it really doesn't matter when you do your analysis, is it? You've only got to look at the charts 6 times a day, and you're asleep for 2 of those candles, which is why I like the 4-hour for analysis. So we're rolling over on the DAX. So we're either going to stop here and create an accumulation potentially, or this might be the start of the rollover. We need to be watching these opening range highs, this accumulation, and obviously the opening range breakout. So this level is obviously of interest on the way down, which will be your 50-20 zone for potential next leg up if they're going to do it. But we've moved a long way on the DAX on the daily. So we will see. Just shows you the volatility in the last 2 days. You remember I was saying yesterday, was it? Yeah, it was yesterday, wasn't it? There's a few YouTubers I watch, and I scan through their streams, their live streams, and that's the day that I got hammered because everybody was like, from here onwards, everybody was trying to buy this up, and it just did not stop all day. And I was saying there's a few YouTubers got hammered on that. Most of them, pretty much all of them, even the ones that make profit virtually every day, lost. Yesterday, exactly the same thing. Everybody lost money on this. The market was just like volatile as you like, wiki as you like, and no direction whatsoever. Everybody was just stuffed again yesterday. So it's not a nice thing, obviously, but it's good to know that you're not the only person in the market getting hammered when the market is acting like this. It gives you that little bit of confidence that, yeah, actually you do kind of know what you're doing, but everybody that kind of knows what they're doing is also getting hammered at the same time. So just thought I'd pop that in there. If anybody watches any other streams as well, obviously you probably will have seen exactly the same thing. But hopefully today we'll get a little bit more normality, and the market will actually do what it tends to do 70% of the time, which is get this thing filled. So we've had the push, now we're looking for the pullback. And obviously that's going to produce a green to red day. So kind of the inverse to that, where we push down and back up again. Sorry, that's not a good example. That's an example up here. So we open there, we push up, pull back down. So I'm looking for them to do that, basically. So continuation short. But we will see. Right, I'll leave it there, guys. I'll be back this afternoon at 2:20. Obviously, bear in mind 1:30. We've got the GDP figures, so I'll put a little post in the Telegram group, obviously, just to warn you ahead of time on that one, in case you forget. But that's where I'll be concentrating on the US positions that I've got, and see if we can get some decent movement off of those. We could well just get some volatility, and then it all gets kind of undone. So I will take profit quick on these GDP figures if we get there, but we'll see. Shoes, we are all human and we all slip on bananas the same. Yes, exactly. Even the best traders in the world have bad runs. Happens. Everybody does it. You cannot beat the market every day. Well, I wish you could, but you can't. As long as you beat it most of the days, that's what it's all about. Okay, I'll leave it there, guys. Anything else you need, come into the Telegram group. I will be in there. Back at 2:20. Keep your eyes on the news at 1:30. Have a good afternoon. Good morning, and I will see you this afternoon. Have a good one.